So I first heard about The Crown because the scripts came through and it was originally for a different character. And I met Stephen Daldry and I screen tested on that character and then I got the part. And then months later, I heard that they still hadn't... I'd heard from somebody, a friend of mine, who knew that they still hadn't found Margaret. And it was like one of those really weird moments you never have as an actor because you're always doubting yourself. But where I suddenly thought, oh my God, I think maybe I'm meant to be playing Margaret. And not in an arrogant way. It just suddenly, I don't know, it was like a weird moment of, not serendipity, what's the word? Epiphany, yeah, not really, yeah, but not quite, not as extreme. It's not like, oh, it's me. And then Nina Gold, who is just the best casting director ever, an amazing, amazing woman. Yeah, she thought it was right, and I came in, and then we screen tested, and then it happened. And it was, I just remember when I got the job, I was filming, and we were in this little courtyard in Belfast. I literally ran around the courtyard like this, in a square, just being like, oh my God, because I just knew it was just going to be such a happy journey, because you don't get parts like Margaret on screen, and I was really, really, really just, it was like a real turning point in my life, for sure. I was so nervous. I was so scared, yeah, because it's a real person and because you don't want to get it horribly wrong, and also you don't want to like mimic somebody. So it became a kind of journey to how much of me am I bringing to it, and how much do I need to become this person that was a real person? And that was a really hard line to tread and a very scary one. And I still didn't know, even halfway through filming the first season, I didn't know if I just got it completely wrong. I think the good thing about it was that everybody was in the same boat. So Claire and Matt and I were all going through the same journey, and we had the support of everybody, and we were all making kind of collective decisions, like the accent, for example. And if we'd done the accent that really was true to their accent at the time, it's almost for a modern ear so impossible to hear. It's sort of very like this. You can't really... I don't think you could hear that for 10 hours in a series and even get accustomed to it. So we had to find a kind of middle line and really treat it like an actual dialect. And all those things helped to shape the family that we were trying to create. And then I just tried to read everything I could. I watched every bit of archive footage I could find. I listened to all her favourite music. I tried to get as many kind of first-hand accounts through like ladies in waitings that used to work for her, or different people that knew her, and lots of little stories about her, even people bumping into her in loos and stuff, that you could get a hint of who she was. And then it became really mainly about trying to capture the spirit or the soul of her, or the essence of her, really, as opposed to try and copy exactly who she was. It was more like the fire inside her that that was most useful to try and find, really. And she's such a kind of unique, brilliant kind of person. She's also incredibly vivid and really vibrant. And that was amazing because it meant that the parameters and the range of who she was, for example, the range of what she feels is extreme. You know, she feels very in either side, whether it's incredible lows or ecstatic highs, and that became like a barometer of who she was, and that was really exciting to play. But yeah, it was incredibly scary. Even putting the wig on for the first time, I just was like, how do I feel like I'm not pretending to be somebody and just try and live it in a way? I mean, I knew nothing about any of them. And in fact, interestingly, we had to research up until 1965, and because that's when season 2 ends. And I made sure I actively stopped because I didn't want to preempt any of the things that Margaret happens to her later on in her life. So the modern royals, I know nothing about. But I know everything about the royals between 1947 and 65. But the most I knew about the royal family was like a trip to Buckingham Palace from school. I knew nothing. I didn't really know anything about Margaret at all. So yeah, it was an amazing thing to learn about them and suddenly develop a lot of empathy for them. Whereas I think I probably judged them before. I didn't know what the point and the relevance was anymore. But I mean, I think that's what Peter did so amazingly well, and I felt so kind of proud to be part of something that actually dissolves your judgments or your prejudices about a group of people. And I think the royal family, for all of us, although I appreciated the kind of history of the royal family, and the kings and queens of like Elizabeth I and things like that, and when you learn about them at school, I have to say, I never really thought of them in the human way that Peter allows us to see in the show. And imagine as well what it would be like to be a member of the royal family, and not just the external things like the palaces or the clothes or the money or wherever else it is, but the psychological restrictions and trauma, actually, of not being able to be who you really are, but you're utterly defined by what you're born into, and there's no escaping that. And if you want to escape it, you have to become Mrs. Townsend and ultimately be rejected by your own, what your family represents. And I think that's what was so interesting about Margaret, is that I had such an amazing opportunity to play somebody who was so conflicted, where the real her, you know, there was so much potential of all the different lives that she could have led. Everyone says she could have been a ballerina or an actress or all these very extremely creative sort of expressions. But really, she was known as being the Queen's sister. And that's, I think, incredibly difficult. And you lose your father prematurely, and then you're not allowed to marry who you really wanted to. And how does that leave a person? And that was what, particularly in season 2, we started to grapple with. Yeah. I think that the most difficult part, or the most challenging part of the show and finding the journey of this person, I suppose, was exactly that, is how do we, when we're filming them all out of sequence, in this first season we were filming, you know, we started on the first scene of episode 10 first, and it was so scary for Claire and I. Remember being up in Scotland, and it was like a really windy day, and headscarves were going everywhere, and we were trying to find the accent, and it was just, we were both so terrified. And sometimes we'd be filming in one location, so Clarence House, where Margaret lives, we'd film 4 episodes, you know, in the same day, or different scenes from them, or with 4 different directors. And I think the most challenging part was trying to see someone's evolution really play, because they age, you know, they age over the 2 seasons, and that's all about kind of inner state and what they're thinking, and how they feel about themselves and the whole journey, I guess. And I really, really wanted to make sure that I set her up from being 17 at the wedding and having this father that she was completely idolised, and then the journey to disillusionment, really, and being wounded, and trying to find it in either Peter or Tony. And so that was the most challenging part, really mapping out, making sure I knew exactly where she was in each different episode, even though we were filming different. And again, so rare and so lucky to get to play somebody over what is a 20-hour, 20-hour series, for us anyway. And if it had been a film, she would have been in the background for like 30 seconds with a cigarette when we're drunk, you know. So it was amazing to really spend time with that person and get to play her as she grew up. The most enjoyable thing, I think, is just Margaret. Like, she's just the coolest person ever, and she's so sort of like unapologetically herself, and yeah, like I said, so bold that it was just amazing to get to know her, and B, it was just so fun, like putting cigarettes out and sandwiches and just being like naughty. It was a really beautiful gift and the happiest job of my life, definitely. So the best audition advice is, and it's really simple, and I learned it the hard way, and you always, you think you know them, but you don't, and this is about lines. So learn your lines back to front, inside out, so that you could actually do them backward really, really fast, that you can do them while you're cooking eggs or someone's talking to you. You could just drill them all the way through, so that it becomes part of your, it's already so far in your memory, in your body, that you're no longer thinking about the lines anymore. And even if I think I know the lines, I usually don't know them well enough. And my first director, David Thacker, who I owe so much, he taught me that. And Anthony Hopkins does it too. Anthony Hopkins, when I worked with him, I sat down, I was like, can you tell me all your tips for everything? And he said he does the lines at least 2,000 times each before he does anything. Even if he's doing Transformers or something, he'll just always know the lines inside out. And then it takes away half of the anxiety and the nerves about in the room, because if you know the lines no matter what, even if they're throwing a million things at you, even if someone's looking bored, leaving the room on their phone, they clearly don't feel like you're the right person. If you've got that, you have like an absolute safety blanket that you're already given half a chance. So that's it. Preparation. get someone to test you endlessly. My poor sister and housemates. And survival tips. Do you know what? The main thing, I think, is making sure that you have a life outside acting. That you can find acting is a sort of 24-hour job in a way. And it's not about how many hours you do on a set or how many auditions you get. It's the life in between that informs the work that you eventually do. And someone else said that auditions are also just as much, treat them as if you've got the job. Because the auditions are the work too, if you know what I mean. So you're getting to act in the room. So that it takes the pressure off the sort of like need to get these jobs to make you feel like you're successful, to make you feel like you're enough. I think so much self-worth for actors is attached to that and what people view as success or not. But I think the main thing is trying to learn to like yourself enough to, because there's so much rejection and there's so many variables and so many sort of other people outside of you telling you or giving the impression whether you're good enough or not, and so finding a sort of sense of self that you back yourself enough, really, and it's really hard to do. Yeah.